Welcome to the Expat Edge with Marcus and Matt, where we answer your questions about becoming an expat to help you thrive abroad.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Expat Edge. Today we're going to talk about the difference between living as an expat in Germany versus living as an expat in Russia. I've only lived in Russia, but Marcus, you've lived in both Russia and Germany as an American expat. What are the biggest differences between life in both countries, specifically for expats?
Yeah, for expats, I would say the first thing that I noticed living in Germany long-term versus, for a longer period of time in Russia, everything has to be organized and planned out in Germany versus Russia. You can do things at the last minute. You can stop by the store, buy something at 11 p.m., 12 p.m. Versus, all the stores being closed earlier. Sometimes we're out and our local shop is open till 9 or 10 in this area. But sometimes when we go visit a different place, last week we were near Frankfurt. We stayed a couple nights, and all the shops closed, like Aldi, Lidl. They closed at 7, and ours here closed at 9. So in certain places you can, get your groceries later. But if you're traveling around, you can't bank on a shop being open late. And it's just...
Well, I know the weekends in Germany, when I was there as a tourist, I remember everything closed on Saturday and Sunday. Most things are actually closed on Sunday still, aren't they?
Sundays, yeah. Yeah, most shops are closed. So I'm talking about grocery stores, things that you want to go to the grocery store and buy something, especially if there's going to be a holiday like on a Monday or, Monday, Tuesday. You have to buy something, all the stuff that you want for that holiday. Let's say you have friends over or something. You have to plan and grab everything on Friday or Saturday. And sometimes because there are so many people trying to get last minute things. Well, last minute, not to me, but on Saturday, there could be the things that you wanted to buy are gone. So you may have to go Thursday or Friday in advance. And that's just like an example of, all the stores. But even when it comes down to recently, we were trying to schedule an appointment with the dentist. I mean, they're booked especially in the summer, they're booked way out in advance, 2 months, even 2 months in advance. Or if you want to take your car in to get serviced, I would have to, in order for me to get a place, next week, I would have to call 10 places, probably. I've done that in the past. Last summer, I called probably 5 or 6 places. No, we're booked 2 weeks in advance. I'm like, you don't have, just a half hour to do this minor thing. Okay, the other thing isn't so important. And in Russia, I never had a problem with that.
Right. Well, I think that has to do with the fact, though, that most people in Russia can't afford to do everything that you as an expat are able to afford, right? Everything's a lot cheaper in Russia, but in general, if you think about going and getting your car just checked out, I don't even think Russians do that. It's like, unless something's broken, they're not going to the auto repair shop, right? Whereas in Germany, I think people take pride in making sure that there's, regular checkups done on their car. That's just an example. Or the dentist, for example, as well. I mean, in Russia, it's not common for anyone to go to the dentist unless you've got a problem. Whenever you go to the doctor or the dentist in Russia, the first question is just, what is your concern? Not, nice to see you. Let's do your annual checkup.
Yeah. Well, in that example, more and more dentists reaching out to you. Hey, have you been out? You've been out away for 6 months. It's time to do your checkup. That's quite rare, I would say, still in Russia, although some clinics do it. But in Germany, it's like you get a letter, in the mail. Hey, we haven't seen you. We haven't seen you for 6 months.
Right.
Come in. And I would say neither of those things are bad. It just depends on kind of your personality, your preference of how well organized you are and how well you like everything planned out. So that's the first major thing that I noticed between Russia and Germany.
for me, I obviously haven't lived in Germany, but I'm going to guess that it's most similar to other Western countries in that in Russia, one of the biggest problems is that Moscow is a great place, right? Maybe not today in 2022, but in general, Moscow is a great and developed city. Although, as soon as you leave Moscow, there's nothing, right? It's way less developed. There's almost no infrastructure. Whereas in most of Western Europe and the United States, you can live in a much smaller city, or even in the US, you can live in a small town and have most of all the infrastructure, aside from public transportation, that you would have in a big city. But in Russia, you don't have that. So I imagine in Germany, it's quite similar that you have, all of the stores that you need, healthcare. These are concerns that a lot of people have in Russia outside of the big cities, at least expats.
Yeah. So when we're talking with expats in Russia, it's much different. Well, not even expats in Russia, just Russians who are moving to bigger cities. And one of the reasons could be because they have access to, healthcare or obviously, jobs and stuff like that. But in Germany, that's not an issue, really. I mean, one of the benefits of moving from Russia to Germany for us was we could kind of get away from the big city. So we came from Moscow and moved in a smaller town outside of Bonn. And sure, we can drive to Bonn within 20 minutes or so, but really we don't have to, because there's everything that we would need in this area, all the infrastructure. Is it is it a city? No, it's not a city with lots of things. There are lots of things to do. You have to drive to a few minutes away, but with regards to infrastructure and quality of standard of living or quality of life, you can get pretty much everything in this area. You don't have to go to the bigger cities. Right.
Exactly. So I think that's probably one of the biggest differences. I mean, a lot of people who move to Russia, I wouldn't recommend living in a city outside one of the top, let's say, 5 or 6 largest cities in Russia. And even outside of, even Moscow compared to St. Petersburg, big difference. So in most Western countries, that's not such a big problem.
When they're thinking of going to Russia, they've expressed interest in going outside of Moscow, St. Petersburg. And I would say that's a great idea for a short period of time, or as a kind of a long-term tourist. Like, let's say you're going through the country by train. That's a wonderful trip. It's really great. But to live in one of those smaller cities, even the large smaller cities, 500,000, 800,000 people, the healthcare and things like that, you're just, as a Westerner, what you're used to as far as standard of living, you're not going to be comfortable most of the time. I mean, sure, it depends on the person, but for the most part, you're going to get there and you'll have to change a lot of your expectations and your comfort.
Right.
Although I would just add to that, if you're an expat in Russia, you can probably afford more in those small towns. So it kind of depends on kind of your lifestyle. If you're looking for nightlife, then a small town outside of those big cities might not have anything or have much. But those are kind of the first two big differences that I noticed. And another one is this is kind of an interesting one with families, and it kind of goes into healthcare. With families, you're pretty much taken care of as far as healthcare with families, and they're supported. In Russia, I mean, it's kind of a interesting shift, because in Russia, when you go to like a restaurant or something like that, there's always like a kids play place and things like that. So there are elements of lots of things to do for kids, and restaurants all have these things for kids. But the healthcare with kids and that's always a worry. Like, what if something happens? What if something major happens? I'm not sure I'll get the high quality healthcare. Germany, you don't have that worry. But then, not even there's not
a worry about quality sometimes, though. In Russia, it's does it even exist?
Right.
Certain treatments just don't even exist.
Opposite side of the coin, it's like there's not much to do with kids. Like, there's parks and places that you can go. Like, theme parks, attractions. But if you're in a smaller town outside of maybe a bigger city, then you have to drive quite a ways to just have something to do with the kids. It's normally like, going hiking or walking in the park or something like that. So yeah, I would say that's probably a minor difference, but something I definitely, having kids, recognized.
Right. Well, I agree. I mean, I always said if I ever had some chronic illness, I would never want to be in Russia. I mean, it's just not, unless I had a lot of money to pay for some super special treatment. But in the West, yes, healthcare can be expensive, especially in the US. Topic for another video, but at least it exists.
Right. I mean, you hear, I've had Russian friends have issues, and they have to, if they're not in Moscow, they have to travel to Moscow to a specialist to to get treated. And there are excellent specialists in Moscow, but because of obviously the demand there. So if you're outside of a bigger city in Russia, then and you have some kind of health issues, that's always kind of something on your mind that could happen, right?
So I think those are kind of the big differences, at least for us. I mean, we could go on about this for hours, right? Talking about the differences and comparing. But I think the biggest impacts on life are what we just kind of talked about here. And, and as we mentioned in one of our other videos, in every country, there are pluses and minuses. So you just have to kind of know that and figure out which negatives are deal breakers for you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time.
This was the Expat Edge with Matt and Marcus. We hope you enjoyed the video. Visit theexpatedge.com for even more content that will help you thrive abroad. You can submit your ideas for video topics and sign up for free at theexpatedge.com. See you there.